Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Traveling Mollies. I want to welcome all our open micers, but tonight we're very pleased to have two very special features: Rebecca Morgan Frank and Brynn Saito, who will be reading after our open mic. My name is Al DeGenova, and I'd like to introduce my co-host, Nina Corwin. Nina.
Hey Al. Hey Al. It's a new year.
It is. Happy New Year.
Did anybody celebrate anything on January 6th? Never mind.
What?
So, we have more people in this open mic and this whole thing here in Zoom that are from other states than we have Chicagoans or people in Chicago. People far flung, and but we're all in one space for tonight, and I am looking forward to hearing from everybody. But Al and I usually start the reading with a poem of our own. The open mic, people have 3 to 4 minutes, and then we go on the features, and then after that we'll have a conversation with the features, which is usually pretty wonderful. So you'll want to stick around for the whole thing. So I'm going to start with a poem called Back Room at Bookman's Alley. Bookman's Alley is really well-known place to Chicagoans. Used to be in Old Town, and a friend of Bill's and mine did a photo, not essay, what would you call it, but he had other he had wordsmiths write pieces to go with his photography of this place that holds all this history, and this is after one of his photographs. It's for Mark Perlish. Back Room at Bookman's Alley. You wonder how such a cache comes to be here? Someone lets go. Someone comes rummaging. That's all it takes. A little rust, a little rescue. Like this bugle here. Not many folks have the chops to make it swing, hence the dust, the double markdown. As for these bullets, I can't say what war they came from, but probably some history buff will pay a decent price. For now, I've arranged them side by side like a tarnished salute, kind of set each other off, don't you think? Like bullets make their own song, one part reveille, one part taps. You want backstory? I'll give it to you. Is it true? No guarantee. What's true is that stuff comes and goes. It's the light through the tear in the curtain turns the dust to gold. Thanks. So Al, what you got?
Okay. I'm going to read, well, this is, now I lost it on my computer. I have some of you know, and some of you have already pre-ordered the book, and thank you for that. I have a book coming out the end of this month on Kelsey Books. The title of that book is called Human Nature. This collection is a little more political and has a little more social conscious than what I've done in the past with my previous books. So this one is the title poem, Human Nature. Some will follow the faint trail of blood through the fresh snows searching for the story. Some will pay a man with a pickup truck to remove the carcass. The deer that ran, a single bullet in its belly to die under a pine tree in my woods. Coyotes in the night mutilate the hindquarters, scrape out with sharp clawed paws warm organs and entrails. Crows peck and pull fur and skin down to long white ribs, the pool of red and purple, the lifeless eyes of the untouched face. No one blames the coyote or crow for their hunger, nor the hunter thinking he missed who hoped to share venison with his family. Some, though, without anger, would kneel on the dying neck, draw a gun, a handgun, and shoot 15 more holes into the hide. And now my computer has decided to not work. I'm sorry about that, and I can't finish the poem. My computer just locked up, and I can't read it. I will let that embarrassment go by, and bring on our first open micer. Haven't heard from Patty McMillan in a while. You want to start us out tonight?
Sure. I hope you can come back when your computer wakes up, because
No, it's like totally locked. But
man, so sorry.
We can still see you though.
yeah, I can't get anything to move on my screen. But go right ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, well, as most of you know, I too have a book coming out, but not quite as soon as Al's. But my book Running Wild is in pre-sales from Finishing Line Press right now, for another 2 weeks. So this is the title poem, and it's called Running Wild. A young girl, I gallop the green lawn, she centaur, child of cloud, my proud mane streaming, reins in one fist, riding crop, landing hard. I give myself new names, Shy Anne and Percival, Rufus, Sir Mac. I know real horses. I've flicked away real flies at my grandmother's farm, have worn my sister's riding helmet, black knee boots, her canary jodhpur pants. I have held the dented can of saddle soap, used bits of kitchen sponge to make a lather. I've smelled real smells, manure mixed with hay, rain-wet leather, men's sweat. Yet I prefer these afternoons of being a wagon team all by myself, harness jingling as I turn a wide arc, of being, when I will, a whole herd. Thank you. And I'll read one more. It's this is the first poem in my planned second book, which is now looking for a publisher. It's called Paris 2002. Near the Luxembourg Gardens, where couples sit in neat rows on the pelouse autorisée, we sit on a bench, dropping coins into the plastic cup held by a boy whose parents play Strangers in the Night, mom on clarinet, dad on rhythm egg. You ask me whether I miss my ex-husband. You say you don't miss your late wife, you only miss being young. And I say, what do you mean? Aren't we still young? We visit Karnak, that carnival of cairns, rocks frolicking in lines across the landscape. We eat artisanal crepes, artisanal lavender ice cream cones, French fries rolled in newspaper with mayonnaise. We pee in co-ed toilets, watch birds in poplars, watch a man trying to throw a paper plate like a frisbee. We are one with the world, and I'm sorry I came here with you, because after this I'll have to go back to my real life, my dying father, my dead dog, the bleeding Chicago heat, the hot flashes of perimenopause. We take a taxi past the place where Diana was killed. From the news photos, we expected a long white tunnel, but it's a short underpass with white pillars. We wonder if Diana was wearing a seatbelt. We think it's lucky her bodyguard struck dumb, because what is there to say? That's it. Thank you.
Wow. Glad to hear you again. It's been a while, like Al said. So I'm just gonna jump into inviting a totally new poet to us. Jessica Sartori. Let's hear what you have.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me. I'm a friend of Judith Valente's. We run in Benedictine circles, and I'm from the Puget Sound Triangle of Tacoma, Seattle, Vashon Island. And my poem is The Coronation. Hats, hats, hats flock into Westminster Abbey, saucered, flowered, netted, in hues of pink and periwinkle. The bugles bleat, "We are here to crown a king." The procession entered, wrapped in capes of royal blue and cloaks of scarlet velvet, the shoulders circled in ermine. The leader of the House of Commons, a modern-day Boudica, her hairpiece, redolent of Caesar's laurel of victory, bears the multicolored jeweled sword of the state. The cleric's file in, trimmed in traditional garb. Yet there's something different. It is the red-haired Bob of the female Anglican Bishop of London proclaiming the gospel. The rich, sonorous voice of the Welshman, topped up with the Holy Spirit, delivering the Kyrie eleison in Welsh. The gospel singers, this bevy of white swathed doves, praising Alleluia. The African yellow butterfly singing the sacred fire lifted above the gathering. If we squint, we can see other visitors. Mahatma Gandhi peering over the shoulder of the Indian and Hindu prime minister, reading the first scripture. Queen Elizabeth in matching seafoam green suit, pillbox, and purse, beams proudly beside her new king, the new king. Diana, black velvet dress and pearl choker, leans on one of the tombs, watching like a hawk over her sons and grandchildren. This could have been her moment. Other moments carried in memory. One of the sons, after pledging to be liege of life and limb on his knees, arose and swooped in to plant on his father's cheek a kiss. Clerics, including a Greek Orthodox priest and a Roman Catholic cardinal, gave blessing. A young lad stood transfixed, recalling David and Goliath, face to face with the new king. Your Majesty, as children of the kingdom of God, welcome you in the name of the King of Kings. A few heartbeats, and it was all over. A grand and gallant gesture placed in a sacred envelope, forever sealed in space and in time. As they recessed, the bells pealed, and the Savior's vow, "I come not to be served, but to serve," rang true. Out in the rain, the twitching flanks of the Windsor Greys appear, spelling out a staccatoed code. Hooves, hooves, hooves.
Thank you. I'm back. Sorry for that. Technology's great when it works, and when it doesn't work, it ain't so great. I think I missed Patty. Sorry about that, and most of Jessica. Next up, let's call Pablo Atavala.
There we go. I think you can hear me. Hi, Happy New Year. I have two for you. The first one is Jeremiah. Jeremiah. The door to hell was hung the other way around. We buried our talents, the rubble and the hunger in a spyglass so far away. The world and too much with us, the sin of omission, always already burning for the good we did not do. The door to hell was hung the other way around. Fall the scales. This is the garden. Steward of the vast steppes, the mountain, tundra, keeper of the sea, tender of the soil, at war. At the door to hell, the rainforest on fire. And thank you. And this one is called Disoriented. My sister finds my father sitting on the floor trying to catch his breath. She tells me how pale he looked, a sickly green, struggling to speak. I thought he was, I know, I know. I interrupt so she doesn't have to say it, because I too can feel the corridor closing in. But he's okay, I say. Yes, yes. One yes sadder than the last. And I can hear the low rumble of an organ filling a church, climbing its spires. A heavy door creaks shut. Clear winter light pours through high windows. It's Boxing Day, and we're all struggling to breathe. Yes, we know it. Yes, the way a room feels empty when full of cardboard boxes. My father could bloom orchids once. Let him rest, I say. I promise to call him tomorrow, and tomorrow a cold wind blows across empty cornfields. Frost sets into the ground. Beneath the empty branches of an elm, beneath the leaf litter, bumblebee queens burrow and shiver and sleep. Yes, she says, trying not to weep.
Wow. Pablo, somebody in the open mic, you left her with your mouth hanging open. And I'm going to ask her to read next, but I want to ask you that first poem, is that a collage poem or?
It's things taken from the book of Jeremiah and then things that are happening now.
That was wonderful. That was wonderful. So, Susan Nordmark, if you've recovered.
Yeah, let me get normal for a minute here. Okay, hi. So I'm in Oakland, and this is called Hedge Apples. They're all looking down, college girls now. My sister used to walk home from school like that, but head in a book, look what my mother said, look where you're going. And my sister would lift up from the open pages and wisp her hair for a moment, her cheek white in the afternoon winter light, disappearing behind the naked black trees, and tromp up the banister, still reading, and disappear behind her doorknob. She took me home past the hedge apple house. The tree has big thorns that come out of its trunk and branches poking sideways like barbed wire. I don't know why they have them, hedge apples. They're bumpy green like this girl in my class's skin disease with pricky, sticky fur inside, and you can't eat them or even, Dr. B said, feed them to cows. He went out to the country sometimes to pull calves. I never saw it, but there was a film for 4th grade. All the boys laughed. The buffalo was standing in a field, and the baby slooped out of her all shiny like a pearly smudge into the weeds. The mother pushed her lips against it. They're all velvety until the baby got the idea to stand up, teetering, sagging back into the prairie grass, flickering its tinker legs up again. They have to walk or they'll get caught, our mom said. Caught by what? I said. My sister stared at me over her tuna sandwich. Cattle used to be like buffalo, she said. What are you talking about? I said. Before, when they were wild. She leaned her elbows on the tablecloth and stared at me like I should know. There would be wolves after them. They have to get along, like in that cowboy song. But cows are not like buffalo anymore. And instead of the baby plopping out fast, they need Dr. B to help. My sister didn't tell me why. And now they're grown up, the tall girls, walking up the hill past our house to their college dormitories in the early evening moon. They're still not paying attention to how your shoe can check against the sidewalk blocks where the tree roots push them aside and the corners jut up like teeth. They're just looking down at their phones. My sister walked me home when I first started school. There was a bigger boy once bothered us. He walked right behind us every day on the way home, our whole way. His hard boots kicked my heels. He made a noise next to my head. Zig, 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 zig. One day, at the corner of the hedge apple house, he ran ahead and turned and looked at us, and he didn't say anything, but his face made open mouth laughing with no sound. She told me later she was scared, but I didn't know it, with her standing next to me in her red coat and mittens in the snow, shouting at him like a teacher. "Get away from us right now," she said to him. He closed his mouth. He stopped the laughing face. I don't know why he finally stood away. She yanked my fingers, and I hurried behind her across the street, but I cranked my neck to see how his eyes looked now, and she said, "Don't. We're going. Now come along." My sister looked everything up in her computer. She knew how to understand science things, like cancer, but the hospital didn't fix her. Why couldn't they?
Wow. Powerful stuff. Thank you. Next we'll do is keep up with this kind of boy, girl thing. Robert Chacoin, what do you got this week, this month?
Well, on a much lighter note, I got the usual tree minutes of shorties on hard copy. Almost Dry January. I must learn to take very small sips of wine and let my lips rest sometime on the rim of the glass, like a medic giving mouth to a dormouse from a children's book. Ceasefire. Well, they started out exchanging prisoners. Then they exchanged pleasantries. Then they exchanged telephone numbers. Then spouses. Then religions. Then cultures. Then they exchanged precious bodily fluids. And it all got to be just a little too intimate. So they went back to exchanging gunfire. Late evening. This book half finished. This half glass of wine. My old love listening to the tree frogs across the way, and the tree I might have wrapped my car around, are all happy I have given up driving at night. Geology. If I can't be solid as granite, or smooth as marble, or deft as the pebble that skips 7 times when tossed over water, if I can't be soft as pumice, black as obsidian to pull you into slumber, at least let me be the rock, old friend, that you crawl out from under. Sacrifice. So that I would never have to recant or cave in or name names, I made sure not to start a family so they could not be killed in front of me. Not to build a house so that it couldn't be blown up, not to eat or drink so I couldn't be drugged into submission, not to utter my secret word for God so they couldn't snuff out my religion. But when they came and found where I'd been hiding my imaginary friends, I darted away to decoy them and have them hunt me down. And I put up my hands and did whatever they told me to do. And finally, for all of us who along the way made our peace with our non-literary friends who were not remotely into this genre of ours as we are, this is called The Utility of Billy Collins. If for Christmas you give a book of poetry to a non-poet, the library or thrift store in their vicinity will probably by February have a new volume on its shelves. Though you hope for the exception that your friend opening it randomly just to air it out might be charmed and follow its smooth current on down the page. Thank you, everyone.
Well, that's devoutly to be wished. Thank you for that. How about Carolyn Wellman?
Hi, everybody.
Hi there.
I have two short poems. The first one is called Winter Running. The river is frozen. Nothing moves in the frigid morning, except the fox out in the sun, running on the ice, everything that could drown it underneath it now to hold it up, to make it stronger. And the other one is something that's still in process, but this is called In St. Peter's Cemetery, Brush Creek, Missouri. Slave Graveyard, 1840 to 1865. Next to the old church, we walk the side filled not with gray and chiseled stones, but rows of tall wood crosses painted white, each bearing the word unknown in big block letters. Who knows what spirits hover here, their names fallen off records, fallen out of time. So many souls seeking to fill in histories never written or passed down, to reach across generations. October wind cuts through our clothes, shakes the trees. We wind through the quiet, somber, in the presence of losses larger than our own, marked by who we are and who we can be. That's it's about one of my dad's favorite places. I had my dad's cousin in Missouri took us there a few years ago, and it's become kind of a famous place, famous in some circles because it is it's where Father Augustus Tolton was baptized, and he has been recognized as the first African-American priest in the USA, and is actually close to getting closer and closer to sainthood at this point. But he was born into slavery in Missouri. He did escape to here, Quincy, Illinois, was educated here, was ordained, had a parish here. And then there's a Chicago connection. He actually was, after he was ordained and served here, he was in charge of the first African-American Catholic parish in Chicago. So that's a little bit of a Chicago connection there. First time I read that a few months ago, one of my poet friends said, I think it needs to be longer. My reaction was, no, I don't think it does. I don't want to hear that. But now I've thought about it, and I think I know what I want to do. So we'll see where it goes. But thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Caroline. That's interesting, actually, and a good poem.
Thank you.
Let's see. Who should we call? John Simmons. He's the furthest west of all of us in Hawaii.
Hi, Al and Nina and Bill and everybody else. You can see the tea leaves behind me are enjoying an afternoon rain here in Honolulu. And so my poem is called Of Dogs and Docs, it's DOCS, Dogs and Docs, and Daredevil Drugs. I take my heart for a walk, as others do for their dogs, to give it a workout of care based on as much need as love. Around a 3-mile double loop, I make room for strollers with kids and people with dogs of all sorts, nodding to humans and hand waving down to their best friends on leashes. Skateboarding teens without shirts sail down the busy street's middle, just to their right of the paint, facing oncoming cars on their left. Cool as my cardiologist telling me I should take sildenafil, a drug I can barely pronounce, so more blood will flow to my lungs. Skateboarders slide past a parade of supper-time cars, nonchalant as matadors, flaunting capes at the traffic of horns, which no one here uses because it's thought unfriendly and rude. But the need to honk is felt in its absence. Dogs trotting by are more civil than those guarding yards whose barks jar the heart I am guiding at 21 minutes per mile. The pill doctor urges I swallow 3 times a day is not covered for old hearts like me, because it's the same thing some take to uplift their flagging ED. Insurance pays only for patients with stents. Otherwise, $1,500 for a bottle of 90, 1 month's supply. A price just right for Godfathers Robert and Al, or other old stars to skate in the fast lane. With a coupon, the drugstore reduces the cost to $115 a month. Side effects include all of the obvious, include calling the doc when 4 hours at attention begs a command of at ease. Each step along my path, I wonder how to keep feeling this good forever, with or without the blood-rushing meds, and I've yet to tell Doc they're still on my shelf. What symptoms will tell me I need them? There are none, he answered. How strange, I think to myself. I rarely question the man who's escorted my health through EKGs, CAT scans, and blood thinner pills. He a believer in less, not more care. Much as a dog who obeys his master, I lead the treatment with Doc behind, his leash in control of direction. Dogs and hearts are faithful up to a point, just as young men who love freewheeling speed know when to veer from road action to safety. I talk to my heart with prayers as I walk it, puzzling the route I should follow, weaving between lucky dogs and risk-taking boys. Thank you.
All right, then. Thanks, John. I want to make a couple of comments. One is that this has been such an amazing open mic, and it's kind of interesting how some of the themes are interwoven. The other thing I want to mention is you have an opportunity that I hope you'll take, all of you, to give some money to our features tonight. And you could do that in 2 ways. One of them is to make a donation through the donation link that is going into the chat right now, if it's not already there. The other is that you'll be able to buy books from the features, and there will be links for them in the chat as well. So Al and I have had a longstanding tradition of passing the hat, and we can't pass the hat. We can only prevail on your love for the word to enable us to give our features the thanks and recognition that they deserve. One other thing, this is kind of like the seventh inning stretch. One more thing. If you're in the audience and you want to participate in the open mic, we choose names from those who throw their names in the hat. Let us know via the our Facebook page. Is it Traveling Molly's reading series or Virtual Traveling Molly's? You could just let us know, and we'll throw your name in the hat. So onward, some prose from Bill Harrison, the guy behind the technology.
Hello, thank you. This is from an upcoming book about my father. The first chapter in this book is about him getting shot in the leg. And this chapter I'm going to read you is called Another Hole in the Leg. George's Mills, New Hampshire, was a tiny barnacle of a town that clung to the humble shore of Lake Sunapee, situated about 50 miles north by northwest of Manchester. The village boasted little more than a general store that doubled as a post office and 2 stop signs. If you had ventured downhill from the store and crossed State Route 11 in 1970, you would have found yourself on the campus of Beginner's Showcase, comprised of a main building, a couple of dormitories, a drab tent that served as both classroom and theater, and a boxy repurposed barn. Beginner's Showcase was the drama camp I attended during the summers following my freshman and sophomore years of high school. On the first day of my first summer there, I cracked my right ankle on one of the wooden stairs as I schlepped my footlocker into the dorm. A sharp jolt of pain nearly sent me plunging backwards. I grabbed onto the rickety wooden railing with my free hand, aware that a fellow camper was tromping up the steps right behind me. I somehow prevented myself from tumbling earthward, saving us both from broken bones and who knows what other injuries. I took a second to catch my breath, then lugged my stuff the rest of the way up to my room. After dropping heavily onto the lower bunk bed, I warily pulled my bell-bottom pant leg up and my white sock down. The skin glowed fiery red where my leg had whacked the edge of that plank. There was no blood, but my ankle smarted like hell. What kind of clumsy idiot bangs his leg on the stairs on the first day of camp? Jesus Christ. Within an hour, the leg had swollen like a rotten fish head, and a yellowish-purple welt had erupted at the site of impact. Maybe I should do something about this. But what? I knew what advice my father would have given me. It's just a scratch. Ignore it. Walk it off. It'll get better by itself. No sense making a fuss out of nothing. I did my best to put the incident out of my mind. I wore long pants despite the July heat because I didn't want the people I was meeting to see my ankle. I refused to look at the injury myself, hoping it would just go away. However, after a few days of constantly worsening excruciation, a counselor saw me hobbling around and insisted I show her my leg. Without a word, she unceremoniously dragged me by the arm to the infirmary. "Oh dear, that looks infected," the nurse declared, after a peep at the ankle. "I bet it hurts like the dickens, too. Here, I want to take off your sneakers and socks and roll up that pant leg and lie down on this cot. Make yourself comfortable. You're going to be here for a while." Now that I was no longer hiding my ankle from others, I felt compelled to see what it looked like for myself. The wound had transformed into something out of a horror movie, a dark violet volcano with a tiny hole at the top adorned with a dot of angry red lava. The day's 90-degree heat, combined with the relentless pangs of misery, had me feeling woozy before I entered the shady infirmary tent. Once I'd seen how disgusting my leg looked, I might have vomited or passed out had I not been lying down. I'm Nurse Gina. What's your name? I'm Bill. Oh, hello, Bill. People around me here call me Gentle Gina or sometimes Gentile Gina. I had to smile despite my throbbing ankle. I'm going to put a warm compress on that nasty wound. That should make it feel a little better. Gina placed a thermometer under my tongue, then brought over a bottle of pills and a glass of water. Yep, just as I suspected, she said 30 seconds later. You've got a fever a tad over 100. Here, take 2 aspirins and drink this water. I'm going to call the doctor and get you some antibiotics. You'll be fit as a fiddle in no time. What took you so long to come see me, Bill? Asked the nurse in a little less jocular tone. Oh, I didn't know. I guess I just didn't think it was a big deal. Even though you could barely walk? I shrugged. Infections like this can be dangerous, even life-threatening. When something hurts like that in the future, promise me you'll go see a doctor, okay? And don't wait till you're in agony before you tell someone. I couldn't admit to Gina that I knew in my bones to be true. My father had taught me that pain was just a thing you endure. Men aren't supposed to complain. It isn't manly to go looking for sympathy or help. I doubted I'd be able to heed her advice the next time I hurt myself. Walk it off. Shit, I'm going to have to tell my parents about this. Mom is going to worry herself sick, and Dad will roll his eyes with disappointment. I decided not to think about it anymore. I gave Nurse Gina a non-committal nod and closed my eyes. Sorry, it was a bit long. Apologize.
Yeah. Nice. Thank you, Bill. Let's see. Next, Robbie Nestor.
Okay. I might need to move over a little here. I've got 2 short poems. This one's going to be in One Art near the end of this month. My mother's purse. Cleaning out her bedroom closet before I sold the house, I discovered in it a graveyard of old purses, stocked with ticket stubs and subway tokens, a pair of yellowed leather gloves, capacious as the womb that housed me, wallet bulging, dispensary of coins and folded bills, condiments and sweets, both hospital and supermarket. It weighed her shoulder down. Soon it will join her gold teeth, comb, all that will mean nothing once I'm gone. Okay. Here's the other one. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Centralia, Pennsylvania. Used to be a town in Pennsylvania that has been burning with a coal fire under the ground for like 50 years. Centralia is burning. A town is just a town until it's empty. Then the echoes multiply, shadows brewing in every corner. Centralia, a mining town in Pennsylvania, has been burning from below since 1963. The houses and lawns fall into fissures in the earth, feeding a fire that cannot be quenched, claiming the streets and fire station, children tossing footballs in the yard, the browsing deer. The highway cracks and buckles, and the trees turn white as bone. Tourists arrive by the busload, hoping to leave their mark on trees and houses belonging to no one. Archaeologists of emptiness, they wander up and down the shaky staircases, following a flashlight's beam, exclaiming over ancient coal-fired furnaces, while others spray paint "fuck" on front doors, rifling through the private lives of people who are dead or elsewhere, lives erased as thoroughly as gravestones when the names and dates have worn away. Thank you and Happy New Year.
Wow. And I have to say that I mean some great great phrases, but just the idea of that, I have heard of that before, just the idea of this this ghost of a town burning. So Richard Nestor, let's hear from you.
Well, having been in Centralia at the same time she was, I will testify that it was exactly like that. Word for every word.
Thanks.
I too am going to read a poem about a place. It's called Desert Junk. It was years ago. My introduction to the desert at dusk after a 10-day car trip. Tom Joding it Grapes of Wrath style across America. The Datsun overheating, so we mostly drove at night. An afternoon's lazy jog through the hills outside of Victorville, our first stop across the California line. Not the expected pristine. In fact, a desert landscape chock full of trash. I could hardly believe it. Were things so plentiful here that they could afford a decor of discards? A potpourri of game show trash rained down instead of rain, at least 10 years before Walmart was invented. It was like some of the stuff in our car, mementos of a future, yet unplanned, along with bigger pieces, box springs and mattresses, sofas and lamps, nested among poppies, artichokes, mesquite, monkey plant, mustard, tumbleweed, a dozen kinds of cactuses. I saw my first coyote that day, the two of us crossing at a respectful jog, along with a roadrunner. No cartoon. Do objects have auras? Maybe. I don't believe it. And yet, near the turnaround, I topped a rise that fell away into a hidden place behind some rocks. A home of sorts. A bed here, a sofa there, a perimeter, a boundary, a mask of domestic arrangement, and a privacy of intention awaiting return. Full, if incomplete. Bits of a blue sky behind the hollow TV. Junk begs the question, is all lost or nothing? Homes have been here since the sea has been. No one was there, but I went back another way, embarrassed to have stumbled on a home of sorts, its cache of need among the stubble, the way I might feel at the sight of two dogs having sex. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. So we have one more in our open mic tonight before we bring up our features? I don't think I missed anybody. Shelley Nation, what do you got to close up the night?
I'm reading some older poems that are in the book coming out next year, 10 Hours to Tulsa through Finishing Line Press. So these are a little older that kind of fit that manuscript. The first one is Stepfather. My sister and I linked together, sharing a tremble between us, walking toward hell after school, unknowing whether the demon will be visiting our house, or maybe he'll be at work and we're safe turning this corner until 6 o'clock madness. 3, 4, 5 times around the table, he grabs her hair and pulls back, eyes red with vacant look. Her mother screams, her stepfather ignores and punches her in the face 6 times. If only she had gotten off that damn couch, even though she had worked for 12 hours at the amusement park. She was tired, achy, found release in fleece blanket. Can't we do it in the morning, she begged. He stood over her trembling, not understanding how someone could deny him, not given in to his demands, would not surrender to his power. So she became a flower being plucked, petals falling with each punch. Somehow in the core of her body, her mother freed her from the demon, pulled her safely out the back door into the neighbor's yard, down the street and into the front bell, where I sat with neighborhood children. If only she'd gotten off that damn couch and checked the oil. Entombed, my sister and I, in dark bathroom darkness. Our stepfather screams at our mother through my own screams. I want my daddy. Telephone, shoes, hangers hit the shut door, the entrance to their room. Rivers from my eyes stain a pink Easter dress worn for this day. And the follow-up for that is a friend from Bartlesville comes to visit. After all the board games had been played, the gossip released from lips and the dog thoroughly tortured, the only thing left to do was snoop inside my mother's dresser. Beneath a pile of folded satin panties, my name written on a small white envelope stunned me into silence. I finally told my friend, it's okay if I open it. It was written to me anyway, as I lifted it out of the drawer. A letter hidden from me. Seeing it was from my stepfather, I slid my finger along the flap of the envelope. He begged me to believe him, that he did not punch Julie 10 times in the face, says it didn't happen that way. Wanted me to know he wasn't the boogeyman, would never hurt us, asked me to choose sides, begged me to write back. Slowly, I replaced the letter beneath the satin panties, closed the drawer, slowly slipped outside with my friend beneath the sun. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. And thanks to all of you in the open mic. It's been wonderful so far. I feel full. And now we have the main act, the features for tonight, Rebecca Morgan Frank and Brynn Saito. And I didn't ask you if either of you had a preference for going first or second. Okay, so then Rebecca Morgan Frank goes by Morgan, and I'm gonna have her start. She's the author of Oh, You Robot Saints. Sometimes We're All Living in a Foreign Country, and The Spokes of Venus, all from Carnegie Mellon Press, as well as Little Murders Everywhere on Salmon Poetry. She was a finalist for the Kate Tufts Discovery Award. Her poems have appeared in such places as the New Yorker, American Poetry Review, and Plowshares, and her collaborations with composers are performed widely. That's cool. I'm gonna have to ask you about that later tonight. She's currently a visiting assistant professor at Cornell, and she serves on the board of the National Book Critics Circle. So Rebecca, Morgan, let's hear what you got.
All right. Thank you so much for that introduction, and everyone for your poems. It's been a snowy time here in Ithaca, and it's lovely to be holed up in the snow, hearing all your voices and words, and coming through from far away. So thank you for all of that, and to Nina and Al, and I'm really looking forward to hearing Brynn read as well. I'm in that funny place where between books, I'm working on a new book, and it's been just about 2 years since OU Robots Saints came out. So I guess I'll start reading a few poems from my pandemic book, OU Robots Saints. And if you can see on the cover is this 16th century automaton monk, and this is an x-rayed photograph at the Smithsonian of one of my favorite automatas. So this book really emerged out of my fascination with this ongoing desire of humans across cultures and time to try to imitate life. This is Monk Automaton circa 1560. Looking at you now is like seeing a god or a king naked and starving in a field. Stripped of your damask robe and wooden limbs, you've been skinned to the iron spine that stems your clockworks to your cracked face. This is when you are most mortal. You could hold him in both hands, a key turn spiriting a clockwork miracle, each supplicant kneeling to its absence of breath, blessed by his cams and levers, the secrets beneath his robes. Mea culpa, mea culpa, mea culpa. His poplar jaw drops prayers, shuts in a wooden cross kiss as his right hand beats the absence of a heart. He wears the face of Saint Didacus, the tripod wheels of Hephaestus, son of the gods, father of the future. The monk almost floats. Robots can do almost anything you please. They are up on sexual favors, cordless vacuuming, and martyring themselves by bomb. Less efficient at deep tissue massage, excellent at listening to senior citizens, working on parking your car. What the future brings is nothing we haven't seen in this quest to be little gods and make what will do our bidding. The medieval monk who doled out benedictions arose from a ruler's dream and was fathered by a clockmaker. The real monk now sits alone in the back room, smokes a cigar, enjoys a glass of whiskey. He's outsourced the job. The real monk is on the dole. The real monk is waiting in the parking lot for offers of day labor. The real monk is unloading boxes at Costco. The real monk sits in the factory, building himself by hand. As I was working on this book and I was really looking backwards, it started with Ellie reading, when I read Ellie Truitt's wonderful book, Medieval Robots. It's just a fascinating, amazing history and inspired a lot of these poems. But then a friend introduced me to her neighbor who was a roboticist working on robo-bees. And so this, I'm going to read this sonnet crown. That's, I don't know why, it's a little long, but why not? Ode to the robo-bee. Oh, little bee, little robot bee, diving and swimming and putting the real thing to shame. You're sexless and hard. You've no allegiance to a queen. The bee loud glade is buzzing like a drone. We're done with the sweetness of hungry. What can also take away. Your tiny wings weld you into a weapon, carry you into the unknown. You've never known a flower. Back in the lab, you've got a body double. They're making you each by hand. The roboticist labors and dreams you into the flight of the real thing. Listen, hear the tiny wings spin, building the buzz. Our curiosity has always built the buzz. For centuries, it was a novelty to wind up what moved. Once inventors used the clockwork, each creature startle and jerk back, a kind of dance, because what was and what can be, how everyone does their best to make nature not just better, but less of itself when repeated, a link. And oh, how we've always loved the miniature, the innocent shrink of everything our harmlessness proved. Over time, our harmlessness proved that we knew little. And when we paused to learn more, we shuffled and shoved our way through the labs, gassed the creatures we could no longer use. Now a small tool can undo a single bee and make it new. We commingle life and death, making robots in the image of the bee, which dies in part to cause you pain. Our job was to make less than the human eye could discern. The laws of identification rely on someone's best guess. Oh, a honeybee? A minor sting like love. Oh, honey, be mine. Everyone loves a movie's war romance. There was a field of flowers and suddenly something zooming around us. It was as big as a spaceship, a giant creature with metal wings. I imagined you were the pilot and we'd set sail on that great machine. You'd learn to fly and I'd build the engines, but now we'll have to go to war. Now we'll have to go to war. There's always a president setting precedents. This reflects the psychology of hornets, how when you stir the nest, no. The truth is that bees themselves are more social than humans, except humans exhibit like bees in war, how the young men want to go back to when they were part of something, a colony full of adrenaline. Why else volunteer for another tour? That desire to return to the hive. That desire to return to the hive where the queen lays over 1,000 eggs a day is strong, keeps bees alive. Like in life, robo-bees can't reproduce. We'll build another machine for that. So humanoid roboticists may produce bees in a giant line of arms. For a robo-bee has no ovary to be suppressed, needs no queen's charm, no birth control. This bee is laborless. When a politician says birth control is bad for labor, he is only talking about us. He wants us to be the drone, the worker, and the queen. No one will respect her. And a queen, no one will respect her. We tried that. We've always tried to replicate bodies with human inventions, milk flowing from Cleopatra's mechanical breast in processions, Christ bleeding redwood drops that pop in and out, his tears displaced water from live fish swimming inside of him, Volcanson's duck defecating for the captivated crowd. So what if it's just a trick? It doesn't take a virgin birch to give us the feel of a miracle. Looking at ourselves handmade, we feel delight again and again, the delight of the new again. Look at the child playing with drones. Look at the package delivered by drones. Soon the drone will be able to land and unlock your door. Package in the foyer. The news can see anything. They've sent in the drones, the weather, building safety, mapping, bring in the drones, crops, border control, catch the criminal. All you need is this flying and zapping. You can find it on the toy shelf. It's called the Flying Mini Robot. Exhibit A, the Flying Mini Robot. This robot has eyes, while the automaton was once for being looked at, a novelty to see life mirrored. This one sees. Look out these camera eyes by staring at your screen for the comfort of your own home. We too can go to Iraq, Russia, North Korea, inside any school. We too can follow the bomb as if we were the sniffing dogs, watching everything unfold again and again. The mini robot flies where we don't dare go. The mini robot can navigate anything. The mini robot can navigate anything. My doctor hands me the booklet. My uterus is removable by a robotic arm. It enters the body rather than imitating it. No more viewing the digesting duck. We're the duck, we're inside the duck. The duck is inside of us. It's a mechanized miracle, a wondrous little parlor trick. The mini robot can remove anything, unwanted waste, bombs, the growth that has been wrapped itself around a uterus. Of course, the uterus must come out. It is vital that all robotic missions leave no trace, break a paper clip in half. This is the size of the RoboBee. Next race is to flight, sense, response, and the colony, which is based on synchronizing here bees so they can move like a swarm, a core, a fleet. Check, wingspan 3 centimeters, wing beat frequency 120 hertz, a speed so fast that the wings are hard to see in flurry and flight. A wingless bee to our naked eyes in live colonies best communicate through a dance. Through a dance, the path to honey, the only way to feed the queen. But what does this mean for a metal fleet whose regal home is deep in the lab? Something so small can travel far to take a life, but cannot make it. As sterile as a robo-bee, soon will be reincarnated like a robo-bee, sentient, shrunk into his chips, packed with human memories. We'll see everything about us that's been tracked, our digital and photographed past, breaking news, a frog's heart and skin, bit cells bear the xenobot, programmable at best. Like the RoboBee, it knows no pain, no sin. I long to be its maker, to be the creator, like everyone around me makes life through lust or labor, a fate we're told is natural. There are no fakes, a bullet-sized wonder, a metaphor for striving, oh little bee, little robot bee diving. That was a mouthful. Thanks for humoring me as a captive audience. Obviously, I'm thinking a lot about war and systems of power right now, and I was thinking about Brynn's book, and I've been returning to a manuscript that I've been working on for a while, and I wondered what this would be to have it in conversation, but I think I'm going to read a couple of these poems because I'm thinking about the role of civilians in war. And my grandfather, who is Filipino, was a civilian prisoner of war in the Philippines through the duration of World War II. And my grandmother and my father and his brothers and cousins all escaped on a Norwegian freighter to the US. And my grandfather was in the civilian camps. And I'm going to read a couple of those poems. It's just as we think about civilians. And as I was reading Brynn's incredible book a while ago, just to me, this resonance of what does it mean when we take away liberty from civilians. There's lots of questions about war, but this is one that I keep coming back to. So I'm going to read a couple of these camp poems. This first one, the second camp that he was taken to on my family's home of Mindanao was a former saloon called Happy Life Blues. Happy Life Blues. This jungle dance hall harbored knife bites, liquored scrapes, earned the moniker bucket of blood like old saloon, sat quiet in the days, drew revelry each night. Then 279 bodies arrive, captives sleeping and waking over and under the wooden dance floor, chaperoned by guards who force them to dig their own latrines to fence themselves in. No one wants to shovel rows of holes in the heat, to keep one hole ahead of the shit that fills the dirt, a measure of days, weeks, months. The stench moves closer to where they sleep until 3 men volunteer, each devoting his body daily to digging, to building modesty with covers of nipa and bamboo. One digs to forget a wife who disappeared on a trip to Manila for toys weeks before. There is no word of her whereabouts. One digs for bigger rations of rice for his children. Emilio digs for exercise, for the sanity of industry. No staying strong is survival. They dig to be tired enough to sleep and dig again and sleep and dig again. They watch Jose's group build the fence past the gun guard's designated measurements. He is sneaking them all a little freedom. inch by inch. It was my grandfather's original name, Emilio, and his brother, Jose. And then when they were moved to the Santo Tomas civilian internment camp in Manila. And this is called Santo Tomas. Enter the walled city, concrete barricades and iron bars progress from keeping out to keeping in. This landscape gym of higher learning transformed by rows of stalls and mud path streets to villages of shanties named Glamourville, Jerkville, Froggy Bottom, over yonder. This slum differs by design. An army contains you, citizens with your new small powers, complicit or brave. Businesses erupt on need, lead to black market loans and deals. What can you pay for a cot, an extra allotment of sugar, milk for your child, soap, shoes, booze, a cigarette, a cup, a spoon, a pass to leave? What surgeries would you endure? Lies would you weave? Who would you deceive for hunger to be assuaged, for temporary freedoms? Will you be the snitch, the spy, the liar? Fight over the inches of real estate, a place in line in a world where the word mine begins to rot, and still every day someone finds a new venture, makes way for dealing and doling, falls to theft, the petty crimes of moonshine, of washing a dish in the bathroom sink, rather than waiting in long lines. Will you clap when the loudspeakers boom offenses and incarcerations, punishing aloud this human desire to survive? And then this is, I'll read one more. I think I'll leave the camp poems there and just turn to a couple of new poems to close out. One new poem from my current other manuscript in progress. And forgive me, I'm losing the document in here. Forensic architecture. You can tell something by the holes in the roof, by 3D modeling, remote sensing, virtual reality. How a building dies is as derailed and detailed as how it was made. Think of the laborers, the long haul truckers, the diggers, the builders, the engineers, the architects of destruction who made the bomb, the bullet, or just the plan to disrupt the beams, a roof, a window, a support. It happened fast, a slow collapse, a reach, an arm, a leg. These things we call remains now aid, a virtual rebuilding of nothing into something no one can ever step into, something that isn't anything. We're all just trying to get to the bottom of it, waiting for something experts can say about death. I didn't quite realize how much I was thinking about these rather heavy visions today. So I'm gonna just end with a couple of two short love poems. This is, well, I guess this isn't quite a love poem. Sonnet for the neighbor's garage's flying roof tiles. Beds, stars, and boats I've floated. My friend dated a sea captain once. We made bar graphs of who we had dated. They were color-coded. She also dated a horse whisperer. What did I have to show for myself? A Wrangler crush, a former almost Olympian, a folk singer, an ill-fated, an engineer or two. One day I woke up and the sky was floating away and the earth was a buoy, and I had only been alive for as long as I knew something about taking sentences and sawing them into lines, while above me roofs fell in pieces like stars. And this is the last poem, Interludes, love poem written while looking at photographs of architecture in Antarctica. Stars fall. There's something measured in the glass cup by your bed. We went to Iceland in a film, or was it Finland, Antarctica, perhaps Greenland? Your shovel and spade, a beach of snow, waves iced. You woke up and named a dog Shackleton. I was above you, ringing a bell, copper clanging against the night. 3 years later, a moon. There is nothing I wouldn't do for you. thank you so much for listening, and I'll pass the mic over. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. That took my breath away, and it seemed as though it kind of took your breath away too at one point. In reading the third from the last or the fourth from the last poem. Thank you. And I think it's amazing, and don't know by what serendipity it keeps happening, that two poets who probably know each other very little, if at all, turn out to have some points of connection. In this case, Morgan had written something about poem or poems by our next feature, right? And you've already read her book, well, this book that just came out quite recently, right? So I am going to introduce the next poet, Brynn Saito. Her third book of poems, which you're speaking of, Under a Future Sky, was published in 2023 by Red Hen Press. California Arts Council Individual Artist Fellow. Brynn is the recipient of the Benjamin Saltman Award and a nominee for the Northern California Book Award. Her poems have appeared in the New York Times, American Poetry Review. She teaches in the MFA program at Fresno State and is co-editing an anthology of poetry written by descendants of the Japanese American Nikkei incarceration, forthcoming from Haymarket Books, which is a press here in Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. And just to give you, well, I'll save that till later. Brynn, looking forward to hearing you.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Hope you can all hear me okay out there. Morgan, what a pleasure to read with you after kind of making that connection through the review. I just find your work so mesmerizing, and I'm so glad you went for it with that crown of sonnets. That was just stunning, Yeah, left me breathless. So thank you, and thank you to Nina and Al and Bill and all of the poets tonight. It feels like you have a really warm, lovely group of poets that are calling in from all over the country, and somehow there's this sense of community between the 10 of you that read this evening that feels very real and palpable. And so it's really an honor to be here. I'm calling in from Fresno, California this evening, homelands of the Yokuts and Mono peoples, teach at Fresno State. I think I'm just going to read maybe 4 poems. They're a little couple prose poems and a couple from the book. I'm going to start with 2 new prose poems that are sort of, I don't read these, they're just new, so I haven't really read them much. But they're sort of, I guess, reckoning with infertility and thinking about fertility and some of these big questions. So this first one's called Numbers Game, and it's about experiences with IVF, in vitro fertilization, and about other things as well, as you'll see. Numbers Game. All along it was a numbers game. 15 retrieved would get you 5 or 6 blasts, would get you 1 to 2 embryos. But 4 got you 0, got you 0. 41 years got you 2 master's degrees, 4 serious partners, 6 not so serious but devastating in their own right. 41 years got you 1 marriage, 1 house, 2 dogs, 1 cat, 3 books, 0 children. 25 is the number of minutes you were under anesthesia for the procedure that would change your life forever. 3.26 is the number of inches of rain that fell in your hometown when you were thousands of miles away, drugged up and waiting. 4 is the number of times per day you wonder if it's too late for you. 4 is the number of times per day you ask yourself, what does that mean, too late? According to whose timeline? 30,000 is the number of dollars it takes to fail. 48 is the age your mother was when they took out her uterus. X is the number of days you have left with your mother. X is the number of women in your mother line who've had the same surgery as your mother. 60 is how many degrees it is when you go walking with your mother through a California winter, light sluicing the cork oak, light skirting the resilient camellias. What does it mean, too late? 1,868 is the number of weeks you have left to live, assuming you live. 4.5 billion is the age of the Earth in human years. 5.5 billion is the number of years until the sun makes its expansion and vaporizes the planet. And there's another prose poem. It's called What is Your Struggle? Your acupuncture doctor calls you a warrior. You hear warrior. Then you hear warrior. What does it mean to believe in one's body? Your mother's massage therapist says her body is ready for a war zone. Hard rock shoulders at high alert, a whole life like that. Why? You didn't grow up in a war zone. You grew up in the suburbs of Central California, the state's vast armpit, a sea level basin that's also a breadbasket, that's also a place of hot struggle, smog, strip malls, and shadows. The woman warrior didn't just go to battle, says your favorite author at the Friday night craft talk. She also led the soldiers home. She led them home. Maybe what makes you a warrior isn't so much your rage, but the fact that you'll sacrifice yourself for another kind of peace. When you start writing poems about a woman warrior, a writer you admire says, I like them, but what is she fighting for? Do you know? Do you know what you fight for? What is your struggle? That's the first question the Zapatistas ask when you visit the autonomous territories for the first time. Your mother hated that you traveled there, the red masks, mighty women, rebel sky. She worried the whole time. You wish she could have come with you, more warrior, less worry. You hope that all that tension in her back means she's growing wings. My mom likes that poem. And I'll read a couple from the book. So this is the new book, Under a Future Sky. And as Morgan had mentioned, and as Nina also mentioned, the book, kind of switching gears, the book is about really rooted in my grandparents' story of being incarcerated during World War II. So they were in their early 20s. They were quite young when they were forced from their homes in California and sent to Gila River, Arizona, the camp there. And they spent about 3 years there in the camps as part of the mass incarceration of Japanese Americans during World War II. And my dad and I had a chance a few years ago to visit Gila River, visit the camp where they were imprisoned. And the camp is built on an Indian reservation. So when we went there, we had 2 guides from the Gila River Indian community guide us around the land and show us the land and take us to the places where the barracks stood and talk about the crops and the orchards and the interactions between the GRIC, the Gila River Indian community, and the Japanese Americans during that time. It was very, very powerful, and they called it a prison on top of a prison. And the community itself, the native community there, didn't authorize that. They didn't want the camps built on their land. They understood the injustice of that, right? But the US government had other plans. So my dad and I did a sort of pilgrimage together and got to visit that land. And it was very Yeah, it was just very meaningful. So the book kind of came out of that journey, and there's many letters in the book that are written to different elders and ancestors, written to my father, and so it's really rooted in these kind of these epistolary poems. And so I'll read a short poem that sort of opens the book, and then I'll read the letter to my dad. So this is, put this here. Okay, this is called February 19th, 1942, and that was the date that the executive order was signed that authorized the camps in 1942. And it's a date that our community sort of commemorates every year. Moon across the sky in the purple morning, dry earth unfurling. In another California, my grandmother is packing everything she owns into one suitcase, two suitcases, the water still in the clay pitcher, water unwasted, only what she can carry. There is no moment in my life in which this is not happening. What is happiness? 2 granddaughters in a summer garden, firstborn, secondborn, and grandmother laughing. There is no moment in which she is not alive and rising, imbuing these hills, this morning sky with shadows. And I'll just close with another sort of prose epistolary poem. This is the letter I wrote to my dad right after we visited the camps. It just kind of came out of me, and eventually kind of made it in the book. And the book actually closes with sort of a secret track, secret poem that's my dad's response back to me, which was really meaningful. My dad is like, he was a PE coach and a football coach, and he's not a poet, never identified as a poet or a writer. And so for him to write something back to me that was quite beautiful, was pretty cool. So this is what I wrote to him. Dear Dad, there's a new way I see the garden now, the one you've been tending for decades on Garden Avenue, of all names, the street of our family home. In haiku written by camp prisoners, days and seasons are tracked by the falling leaves of the moss rose, petal to earth. The poets in camp numbered months and years by the memory of their home gardens left behind on the West Coast, flowering rhododendrons and peony buds they imagined as vibrant, their stalks remaining firm. I think of us traveling that week of 2019, away from California, along the train's course, through Arizona and on to Poston and Gila River. How far I brought you from your garden. Did you think of the sagos, the summer tomatoes and basil, the azaleas and red maples, the night blooming lantana, trees needing trimming, grass going brown, all of the work awaiting you? Did you imagine the dogs chirping the silent white bucket and Mom dragging the hose across the lawn to wake the fountain? Here in the Southwest, I find myself pining for the great Central Valley, as I did when I lived in New York, or that decade by the bay, exhausted from cold bridges and colder waters, longing with my entire body for the landscapes of childhood's kingdom, smog dust and all. I understand now I am nothing. I am the daughter of a living father, blessed to be returning to you after our fire and ice travels through North American landscapes, spotted by our elders' lives, their prison, desert homes, and other jails and prisons, with and without bars and barbed wire. You were not taken. In the night, and shirtless, you were not captured or broken by the sentry's light despite my nightmares. You took your time in the summer garden, where Lee and I played as the light set, basiling our bodies against mosquitoes, baking mud sweets in California's sugary dusk. Dad, your voice is wise now, beyond kindness. I'll see you soon. So thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
Brynn, thank you. There are some killer lines that are they just are like so in your face, and they kind of come out of this more lyric material, and then there's just like, oh my God, yes, but isn't that obvious? But it just like slaps you in the face. Thank you for that. So we're going to move to the conversation, and while Bill sets us up, and I'm gonna try to get this all set here. I do want to remind everybody that you have an opportunity to put some money in the pot we collect for our features. Please do so. The link for that is in the chat, and also buy their books. Just really buy their books. So I'm going to get started. I have a couple of questions, though I would love to ask a lot more questions than we'll have time for tonight. But the first is the two of you, well, this book that you read from, Morgan, the OU Robot Saints, sounds like it really required a lot of kind of research and then kind of maybe channeling or something of the characters that you were writing about. And for you, Brynn, it was particularly writing about the camps and your family and culture's experience. So I want to talk about research, but before that, I want to ask you each, how did writing these obsessions, if you will, change you? Or what was the experience of living through those themes?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the big thing for me with writing, this was the first time I wrote really directly about this history and did the research and more extensively, and it was the first time I really, yeah, tackled it in a way. And so it changed. I think it really helps my family. I think like it really helped us talk to each other about it and surface feelings about it. And it was powerful, I think, for my parents and some of my elders to see me read like the poems publicly and bring kind of the history into the light and say this happened to us. And because there was so much silence and trauma after the experience of the camps, a lot of just shame, right? Just like we don't talk about this. And so for being fourth generation, being able to sort of bring these stories into the light, I think that's what shifted, was it just opened up a space for dialogue and for us to kind of heal some things in a way. So yeah, I'll just kind of say that. Yeah.
How about you, Morgan?
Well, I think my creative practice is always comes out of conversation, of some kind of interest in what other people are grappling with. And I think whether that is with OU Robot Saints, it was just kind of amazing to feel this interest that's trans-historical and shared. And at one point I did an event with Ellie Truitt, and someone asked, which I had wondered, like, did you come across any women automaton makers in your research? And she said no. And so it was really interesting to me when I started with thinking like, oh, I'm really fascinated by medieval automata, and then beginning to go further back and further forward and thinking about ideas of what it was to make a life, and the way that that moved me into writing, for example, about infertility and loss of a mother, and just in some ways I think the automata is like the perfect poetic figure for investigating what it is to be and be made and to make, or not to be able to make, whether that's our creative pursuits or making life. And I think it gave me a way to grapple. I started thinking I was going to do a bestiary of automata, and right as I was starting that book, my mother passed, and so I think it is. It was a place of curiosity and wonder, but also a reminder of what tools metaphor and conversation and investigation are for navigating our own lives.
Yeah, I felt a lot of resonance, kind of unexpected resonance with that crown of sonnets, and because I am thinking so much about the body and technologies of the body, and my mother line, and just, it was wonderful to feel like our kind of work and unexpected conversation in those ways. So it's really beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, same.
You care to say, oh, go ahead.
I'm just saying I felt that as well, reading your book and then hearing the new work tonight. And I think there's connections between ideas of lineages looking backwards and looking forwards, right? What it is to be in this moment with the histories that we have, and as we try to look forward in lives. And and thank you for your poems, Brynn. Sorry, Nina. Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna ask if either of you would want to elaborate on the connection that the two of you had. I mean, you said briefly like you'd written something about Brynn's book, and we're also hearing that you had a grandfather in camp in the Philippines, but so how did you end up with the assignment, if that's what it was, Morgan, to write something about Brynn's work?
Oh, I don't know that there's much to mine with that. I'm on the reviewing team at Harriet Books, and I was excited about and requested Brynn's book, just by what I had read before, and also being very interested in, to me, those kind of conversations about these two very different camps that were, many camps, right? Multiplicity, but different sets of camps that were happening simultaneously. And this is a book I've been trying to write for, I think, 20 years, and I have one poem that tries to look at both in conversation, and I struggle with, it's not my place to write about the camps here, but it feels strange to write about these other camps and not be thinking about them. And to me, in my head, there's always a conversation between those in the readings that I do, because not just because they were happening at the same time, but the systems that they were part of. So yeah, I don't know, Brynn, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. In a way, I feel that pull too, even as I write about my own history. There are so many ways in which during times of war, people are being detained and controlled, and just these patterns of detention and control and mechanisms of colonialism and, neocolonialism. And so I kind of feel what you're saying too. Like, even though I'm focused on this history, I'm thinking also about the legacy of Japanese imperialism, right? And in the country like Korea, where my mother's from, and sort of my mother's family fleeing the Japanese occupation. And that's how they arrived in California, and that's how my parents eventually met. And so it's this complexity of technologies of war. So even to think about this history, you have to think about this other one, this other one, this other one, and feeling that more and more. But something that Morgan wrote about, and she did this beautiful, review of the book. But you used that word, I think, conversation, which you used earlier too. Like it feels like my book, so many of the poems are asking questions, or they're in conversation with my dad, or with the ghosts, or with the creosote. And I think I feel that in your work too, like just this interdisciplinary conversation and this multivocality. And I think as I grow or something as a poet or person, I feel more open to all of those influences and all of those voices. I know like when I was writing poems maybe 20 years ago, it was like sort of just me and my feelings and the poem, and I had something I wanted to say. But now I think through research and history and this interdisciplinary, these interests and curiosities, it feels like poem making is like you're in a room with all these other people now, instead of all these other voices, which is really cool. Yeah.
And to make sense, I mean, it's one of the things I really love about this new book of yours. Is like how do we, not that we can make sense, but how do we, sort of begin to try to understand these histories, and that your method was so directly through conversation. Like I'm always thinking like, oh, I'm doing this in conversation, but I wondered if you could talk about that a little more, the more palpable conversations in the book, because I think that's a really fascinating aspect of the book.
Yeah, there's so many of the poems are letters. Yeah, just letters. And I think that came out of a need to just write to people after I went to the camp, and just writing these long emails to friends. There's a poem in the back at the end of the book to Brandon Shimoda, and that just sort of emerged from an email I wrote him right after I visited Gila River with my dad, and just like, oh my gosh, I saw this and I felt this, and what do we make of this, and what am I supposed to think of this? And it kind of became a poem. So I love the epistolary form for that. It feels so immediate, so intimate. Letters are so intimate, but they're also public in a way too. And so that became the letter poem really became my modality, I think, as you said, of trying to understand or grapple. And I think maybe it's for you this way as well, but when I'm really writing, I'm not thinking about a book or the poem, or I'm just kind of in it. I'm really just writing for myself first to try to make sense of something or grapple with something. And yeah, I don't know, does that feel that way for you as well, like when you're sort of doing that work of writing your drafts and being in the poem space? And
I think of it as it's just working through something. And I think one of the things that's really interesting with when you're with subjects that haven't had a lot of coverage in poems like that, I love the fact that you're part of your conversations with other poets. One of the things that's happened with my poems in the Philippines is the poet Jose Reyes reached out to me, and our grandfathers had been in the same camp, and so we, our books are like, I always think of it as like my poetry brother, like we're writing about the same histories, but they diverge, right? Because all of our families' stories are different, and the outcomes are different, and so we're writing books and conversations with people when we don't even know that we're doing it. And that happens transhistorically too, right? But when it happens with a contemporary poet, and you find that, and it's, you discover things through those poems as well, right? That maybe you wouldn't find in your own, and it's kind of magical to have that.
This kind of brings me back to to thinking about research and researching history, and how I think about going into exploring the history. I think of it as enabling people to kind of enrich not just this scaffolding or the context or the foundation for their work, but particularly with this material that you're both dealing with, I think it deepens your connection with, or the emotional connection with the material that you're working with. Would you tell me how that may be true or not true, or what your experience is in doing research alongside of writing?
Morgan, yeah, I'm like all these thoughts coming to me.
Yeah,
It's a good question, Leanne.
yeah. I'm not. I think I would have to think about that one a little more. Not to dodge, but it's such a rich question. Wow.
You know, one of the things that I think brought this to mind was just, first of all, thinking about the fact that you do have personal connections to what happened in the camps. And today I was listening to public radio, and there is a student who is, I believe she's a law student and a citizen, but from her family's from is Palestinian. And as she described some of the state and the condition of that her family is living in, her family over there, you know, the whole thing that if you're not following the news, you may not know that, you know, the Palestinians were driven from the north of Gaza down to the south, where they were told that they would be safe. And then, you know, kind of the noose tightened around them, and people were getting bombed where they were shot, where they were told that they were going to be safe, and there's so much starvation and illness there and whatever. So that was news, but I was just about crying at, you know, at the end of it. Not that it's the first time I've been exposed to that, but that's what I was thinking about when I was asking about how reading history or doing research can, you know, make the feelings even more real, or the experience.
I think having, you know, being the luxury perhaps of being to someone who's looking backwards versus you know, when I think of my Palestinian students who have so bravely been, you know, bringing work into class that's here and of this moment, right? Whereas having the luxury to go and listen to a recording of my grandfather, or look at archives and walk away with it, or, you know, spend 20 years over it, is such a different you know, generational distance, right? I will say that I have wept over you know, over materials and moments and that is for certain, both in personal ways and in ways when you, I don't know, if you're human and you're reading about war and war crimes, it's very difficult not to have a response. And how about you, Brynn?
Yeah, I think something I've really been thinking about, I guess in relationship to the war now, and thinking about sort of the border crisis, and you know, immigrant families being detained and separated, and a lot of Japanese Americans saying like that same thing happened to us, you know, and again, these patterns of detention and separation, apartheid. You know, I'm fourth generation, again, like this idea of luxury. I'm able to look back, and I'm able to maybe even feel things my grandparents weren't safe enough to feel, you know, when they were being indefinitely detained in the desert. I'm able to sort of think about the feelings they had, and maybe feel some of that and write about it. And it's such a privilege to be safe in those ways. And there's so much brutality happening, ongoing, and it's taken our community generations to heal, to write poems, to come together, to look back on history. You know, it takes generations for the wounding to begin to repair and the healing to begin to repair. And I think that's what sort of breaks my heart when you read the news daily and you see the ongoing brutality of what's happening across the globe, and you think just how long it's taken just my family to begin to talk about it, to begin to think about it, to begin to cry about it, and the safety it's taken and the generations it's taken. Just that this healing is, it's going to be multi-generational, and it's going to need all of us, and those of us who are feelers and poets and activists and dreamers and writers, to what can we do to make those spaces for our students or for whomever. It's just really mind-boggling to me, what's going on, and then how long it takes to really, you know, understand those histories, to be able to look back on those histories. And it takes a bravery. I think so many Americans, right, like don't even know that the camps happened, or you don't even know the Japanese Americans were 120,000 of them, just because they were Japanese American, were sent to camps. A lot of people just don't know that even happened. So I think this act of turning towards your history, turning towards our history as a country, it's a spiritual practice, it's a political practice, it's heavy, and but it's everything, I think, to be able to know our histories. So glad you brought that up. Yeah.
Well, it is your work, both of you, is a bearing witness. Bearing witness and, you know, bringing to a contemporary audience those experiences from the past. It goes beyond cataloging, the cataloging that a historian does. And please, my brother-in-law, don't. Yeah, no, he'll tell me that it's much more than cataloging, but my point is that the poet has the ability to, without telling people what to feel, to give them the opportunity to share in your immersion and feel what it's like to be connected with those experiences. And I want to mention one other part of this. Morgan, you mentioned this interest in civilians and how civilians are affected by war. And I do think that for a lot of people, war is something that happens between governments, countries, people who sign up for the military. And it really is so much more than that. And there is all this kind of roping in of people who are just, living their lives, and all of a sudden having them overturned. That wasn't a question, but it was an invitation.
Well, I think that's interesting when we're looking back at, say, at World War II, those of us who have generations, many of my friends whose parents are survivors of Holocaust, who are very young children. And so we're still the generation that maybe have the opportunities to speak to the generations who've endured all these overlapping atrocities. And I think that's sort of the importance of storytelling, right? And the way that we know that people respond and change when they know someone who's experienced something. And when we're a writer, we bring a story into the room and people feel like they know us in some way, right? And they know our families in some way. And it's allows us maybe to engage with communities and stories and families that in our everyday lives, so we wouldn't. So maybe that's one of the powers of poetry as our still continuing to be an oral form in that sense too. I mean, whether on the page, but also through readings.
Yeah, I like to remind my students that poetry was, yeah, like you said, poetry was the way we learned each other's histories, or we sang our stories to each other, and it was the way we sort of transmitted histories and stories, and it can be a very communal thing, a very collective thing. Yeah.
Which kind of speaks to that whole, some of the things that wise poets have said about how essential poetry is and can be, and why we need poets to speak these truths that take us beyond facts and into experience and empathy. So we just have a few more minutes. I just want to ask each of you to, if there's anything else you want to say, either to each other, to the audience. Before you do, please hold up the book that you would like people to buy. And people, please buy their books. Right.
Yeah, I'll just say one thing that this conversation made me think of the poet Muriel Rukeyser. She has this great quote that as poets, our material is how we feel and how we remember. So like feeling and memory and sort of making a space for those. I think that's a lot of where this book kind of came from, that kind of memory work and remembering and remembrance. And so yeah, I'll hold up one more time. This is my book, Under a Future Sky. And my husband actually did the photograph for the cover. So another kind of collaboration there, which was very cool. And just thank you. Yeah, thanks so much for this space. It's been very nourishing. Yeah.
Where was that photograph taken?
This was, I think, near Death Valley. Yeah, a Joshua tree, yucca tree there, Death Valley. Yeah, he's a photographer. So.
Yeah, and I guess I'll hold up my little pandemic book, We Robot Saints with yeah. And I guess the other thing I would just say is thank you for creating this space and bringing us all together, and everyone for their poems.
Yes, thank you for wonderful readings, and really enjoyed it. And thank you to all our open micers too. It was a really great night. So
Yes.
Appreciate you all.
Thank you all for being with us. And we'll see you the second Monday of February, March, April, and going forward.
Forever.
Or as long as